The Anniversary Engine. Skarloey was sorry to leave the exhibition hall. "Oh, it was nice to see you again, Neil," he said. "And you too, laddie," Neil smiled. "But dinna worry about me. I'll be fine. The lads at the museum will see to it." "We'll take care," said Skarloey, as he was gently raised and loaded onto a trailer. As the lorry drove through the town, Skarloey couldn't help but wonder. "My," he thought, "I never realized how much the town surrounding our little home has changed." Soon they arrived at the railway. A set of temporary rails was laid between Skarloey and the line. Using the lorry's winch, he was gently lowered down, and Rusty shunted him into the works. "It's good to see you again, Skarloey," he said. "And you too, Rusty," smiled Skarloey. "Has anything been happening while I was away?" "Oh, nothing much this time," smiled Rusty. "You've only been gone a few days, and besides, we've had Duke around to keep everything in order." Skarloey smiled. He and Rheneas had always liked the old engine, and held a certain amount of high regard for him. "That's good," he smiled. "But," Rusty continued, "the Finn controller wants to have a word with everyone first before your overhaul begins. He'll be round later tonight." Skarloey was shunted into the workshops and was surprised to see Duncan next to him. Duncan was pleased to see Skarloey again. "I've been stuck in here all week," Duncan explained. "I just had a breakdown while taking a picnic train. My safety valves, you see, always giving good engines trouble." "And of course the fact that you didn't want to do any work until you had had a repaint like the rest of us has absolutely nothing to do with it, doesn't it, Duncan?" Rusty quipped. Duncan blushed a deep shade of red. Skarloey, however, laughed. "Ho, ho, ho, ho! All these years and some things never change," he chuckled. That evening, the other engines were gathered together in the shed. Peter Sam shunted Skarloey and Duncan out into the open in order to listen to the Finn controller. "The Finn controller has some big plans for us," he said excitedly. "Whatever for?" asked Skarloey. "Search me, but I hear he wants someone to pull a special train," Peter Sam replied. "Oh, I wonder who it'll be." "It'll be me, of course," sniffed Sir Handel. "Provided you don't derail yourself," joked Ivo Hugh. "He'll choose me, of course. I'm younger and more up-to-date than all of you," he boasted. "And yet you keep complaining about crews using you for training purposes," groaned Fred. "I shan't be surprised if I were to be chosen, really." "That's if you don't suddenly decide to be ill on the day," grumbled Sir Handel. "Hush," ordered Duke. "It's the Finn controller." "Thank you, Duke," said the Finn controller as he approached the sheds. "Now then, everyone. The Talyllyn Railway in Wales is celebrating 70 years since it was first preserved. Since we are twinned with it, and your relatives are working on that line, the owner has decided that we should hold a special event next week in honour of this celebration. Because of the good work the Finn clergyman has done for both our railway through his books about us, and for the Talyllyn Railway as a volunteer, we shall hold the event in his honour. I have arranged for an exhibition of some of his work, including those never seen before, and 2 model railway layouts will also be on display. Rusty will be hauling shuttle services for visitors about the wharf, and another engine will take the visitors' trains that day. For this, the owner has chosen..." Sir Handel, Ivo Hugh, and Fred all beamed in anticipation. "Peter Sam!" Sir Handel, Ivo Hugh, and Fred were at a loss for words. "Me, sir?" asked Peter Sam. "Yes, you," smiled the Fin controller. Myself and the owner are both very confident you will do an excellent job of it. Oh, thank you, sir, smiled Peter Sam. He then looked at Skarloey. But sir, he asked, what about Skarloey? It wouldn't feel right without him. After all, our railway is named after him, you know. Yes, I do know, chuckled the Fin controller. That is why I have decided that the workshops will be open to the public for that day only, so that both you, Skarloey, and you, Duncan, will be on display and thus able to take part in the event. The week flew past. Crovan's Gate became a positive hive of activity. All along the station, stands were set up, each with displays of special artefacts belonging to the Fin clergyman. 2 model railway layouts were set up inside of one of the station's waiting rooms. The engines, trucks and coaches were cleaned and polished until they sparkled in the sunshine. Everyone practiced their parts until they knew exactly what to do. All except for Skarloey and Duncan. Duncan wished that he could play a bigger part in the event too, ideally by pulling passenger trains. All Skarloey wished for was for Duncan to stop grumbling just once. At last, the great day came. The platform was crowded with visitors, all of whom had come to see the engines. The waiting rooms were packed with children watching the model railway exhibits. One of them resembled the MusicofSodor Railway. Duke, Sir Handel and Peter Sam felt humbled to see replicas of themselves and some of their old friends. Though they wished the Fin clergyman had known about Innie, so that she could have had a model too. The other was based on the Farquhar branch line. Unsurprisingly, a significant portion of children were easily attracted to this, especially when they saw replicas of Thomas, Annie and Clarabelle pass by models of Percy, Toby, Henrietta, Elsie, Daisy or Mavis. In addition to this, a guest speaker occupied the waiting room on the other platform, giving lectures about both the history of the Fin clergyman and of the island itself, from the days of Luoc to King Ori, right up to the present day. Rusty gave shuttle rides along the wharf and back with Ada, Jane, Mabel and Cora, while Peter Sam took the majority of the passenger trains with Agnes, Ruth, Lucy, Jemima and Beatrice. Sometimes the other engines took over to give him a rest. Oh, I wish I could have a good rest for longer, he puffed as Rheneas took over. Well, we all have to keep this railway running, anniversary or not, Rheneas replied, as Peter Sam puffed away to the water tower for a drink, before collecting some trucks for Lakeside. He soon returned and took over the passenger services once more. Though he was feeling tired, Peter Sam couldn't stop smiling. It was a lovely sunny day, and everyone ran to the line side as he and the other engines puffed past. Camera flashes set off around him like detonators, and everyone clapped and cheered at every station and every crossing. But despite it all, he couldn't help but feel a little worried. I just hope Skarloey does manage to take part in the celebrations, and not just as a static display, he said wistfully. Ho, I think the Fin controller has something else in mind for him, smiled his driver. What do you mean? Asked Peter Sam. You'll soon see, came the mysterious reply. Peter Sam was puzzled by this, but smiled. He had a feeling his wish would come true. What'll it be? What'll it be? He puffed. Wait and see, hummed the coaches. At last, he puffed back into Crovan's Gate with the final passenger train of the day. A great crowd had gathered around the workshops. This must be it, he said excitedly. He left his coaches at the station and backed down onto one of the works shed roads. He stopped just outside the building in front of Rheneas. All the other engines were there, and a great crowd of people gathered around them all. "Is this it?" Peter Sam said, slightly disappointed. "Hush!" shushed Rheneas. "The owner is about to speak." Everyone fell silent as the Fin controller and the owner gathered them around Skarloey. "Ladies, gentlemen, children and engines," said the owner, "we would like you to welcome a very special friend of ours. He recently attended the Diamond Jubilee of our very own Northwestern Railway, and we are very honoured to have him here with us today. Please welcome Christopher Audrey." A great round of applause met this, as a thin, elderly man took his place beside Skarloey. "Thank you, sir," he said, "and thank you all for coming. My father was very fond of this railway. I remember when we ourselves first heard about it, and the many exciting events that took place on it. Memories are a precious thing, and I do not doubt that this railway will create many more memories for so many people in the years to come. In light of new developments regarding the stories about our friends, I am glad that there will always be a railway such as this on Sodor, where all those who wish to can come to see and travel behind real engines. However, I believe that there is someone else with something to say too." Far away, Ali sat at a table, watching the event online and thinking over everything. He missed seeing Skarloey, and he wished he could take part in the event too. But he knew he still had a lot of work to do to secure him a good degree and a decent future. And yet, he loved writing stories. He had done so since the day he was born. He had lots of ideas in mind. Stories about flower girls trying to earn money for medicine. Stories about the daughters of toy makers, their childhoods, and the drastic and devastating changes they experienced. Stories about princes and princesses, and how they met and fell in love all through making tapestries. But they could wait a while. He opened up a program on his computer and thought of a name for the first story. Jumping Sheep. Yes, he decided, that sounded like a good name. And he sat at his keyboard and began to write the story, just as a familiar voice could be heard in the background. "Thank you, sirs, and thank you everyone for coming to see us. I do not doubt that the role we may have played in the legacy of the Finn clergyman and his books, however small, has nonetheless not gone unnoticed, and I think I speak for all of us when I say that we are very humbled by your kindness. But there is another little railway too, very much like ours, that has also played a very big part in his work. It is a little railway called the Talyllyn Railway at Talyllyn in Wales. My twin Talyllyn works there, as do Dolgok, Sir Hayden, Edward Thomas, Midlander, Douglas, Tom Rolt, and Alf. They are mostly relatives of ours, and it is their little railway's turn to celebrate the 70th anniversary of its preservation, as I'm sure you'll all know. Talyllyn is unfortunately being overhauled at the moment, just like I am about to be. But I know how happy you'll be if you go down and see him and his friends on their railway. When you do, please tell him that his little old twin sends wishes of dry rails and good running to he who shall surely be recognized as the anniversary engine.